Pentagon. The day before 9/11, Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld declared war.
According to some estimates, we cannot track $2.3 trillion in transactions.
2.3 trillion with a T. To understand how the Pentagon can lose track of trillions, consider the case of one military accountant who tried to find out what happened to a mere 300 million.
We know it's gone, but we don't know what they spent it on.
Jim Minery, a former Marine turned whistleblower, is risking his job by speaking out for the first time about the millions he noticed were missing from one.
This morning, I saw the plane coming this way in a spot. Goes factory directly to the building.
Was it the first plane or the second plane?
That was the first plane. The second plane, no second plane. It was a bomb. Bombed in all the building, not second plane. That was a bomb.
But then there were other doors that were locked, so we were brought into another floor when there was another explosion, and they finally let us continue to go down.
What was happening around you? People screaming?
No, people were pretty calm. When we got down to 6th floor, there was like another shake or another explosion. Everyone started panicking.
You want to call your mother or something?
Bomb in the building, start clearing out. Sorry, you said it's a bomb? What'd you say? Bomb in the building, start clearing out. Got it.
It just went ba-boom. It was like a bomb went off. And it was like holy hell coming down them stairs. And then when we finally got to the bottom, they were coming out on the mezzanine level there. And another explosion came right from it, just everyone flying.
Then somebody said that they saw an airliner go into one of those towers. Then, I don't know, an hour later than that, we had that big explosion from much, much lower. I don't know what on earth caused that.
We've heard reports of secondary explosions after the aircraft impacted, whether in fact there wasn't something else at the base of the towers that in fact were the coup de grace to bring them to the ground.
The ladies that are with me were in the World Trade Center in the first building and escaped through the lobby where they believe there was a bomb in the lobby.
And even the turnstile was burnt and was sticking up, and they just told us to run.
And as we were coming out, we passed the lobby. There was no lobby. So I believe the bomb hit the lobby first, and a couple of seconds in the first plane hit.
We then were talking about the day's work and what needed to be done when we heard a massive explosion that was in the World Trade Center at about 8:46 a.m. in the morning. The explosion came from, I believe at first, we believed that it came from the mechanical room. And then we heard a series of other explosions that sounded up on the above levels of the building, to where we then realized that there was something wrong and there was a major problem.
I think a bomb went off in the lobby first, then a plane hit the building. Then another plane hit the other building. But when I was coming through the doors on the other side of the Trade Center, either they blew the lobby up or something, because it blew the glass out of the doors and knocked us all down, and I got smoke and everything on me. I just feel a little shook up because I got blasted, so I'm just trying to, I want a drink of water. They don't have any water though. So.
Can you tell me what happened? What'd you see?
I saw windows coming out of the building and the ceiling falling on the floor where I was walking. That's when we started heading for the exit. And
then we got downstairs.
We got to the 4th floor from 82nd floor.
And all of a sudden there was this big explosion. I don't know if
everything went
just like what you just seen. That's what we went through before we came out of the building. Then when we get out the building, then another smoke cloud came. Better go through that smoke cloud. Mama just wants you to know I'm all right. I don't know what else to tell you. We came from the 82nd floor, and I don't know what it is. I don't know. I hope to God you're okay. That's all I can say. I don't know what. We saw a shadow. It looked like a plane. Next thing we know, it was boom, and the floor started shaking. And then we saw debris fall down, and next thing we know, we had to get out of the building. We stuck on the stairs for a while. We finally got down to the lobby. Then we get to the lobby, it was this big explosion.
What happened?
We was in an explosion. We was in the lobby and the third explosion, the whole lobby collapsed on us.
What was it like? What was it like?
Horrible.
It's like hell. You don't want to know.
The whole building just collapsed on us inside the lobby.
Was that a secondary explosion?
Yes, it was.
That was the
Yeah, definitely secondary explosion. But we was inside waiting to go upstairs, and on our way upstairs, the whole fucking plane blew. And we just collapsed on everybody inside the lobby.
Similar to the first tower coming down, secondary?
I don't know about the first one, but I know the second one was terrible. Then there was a third one too after that one.
Third explosion after that?
Yes, sir. Everybody was inside the building, waiting to go upstairs. And they just let loose. Everything just let loose inside the building.
So what you told me is that there was a plane or whatever hit the building, then a secondary explosion.
It was like 3 explosions after that. We came in after the fire. We came when the fire was going on already. We was in the staging area inside the building, waiting to go upstairs. Then it exploded. The whole lobby collapsed on the lobby inside.
And it's just mayhem after that?
Just man, everybody trying to make their way out.
There may be more. Any one of these fucking buildings could blow up. This ain't done yet.
How does this...
This is going to...
They were having coffee in the World Trade Center when the first plane struck.
And all of a sudden it sounded like, I don't know where the subway is, but it sounded like a subway collision, a bomb, and it was just pounding, boom, 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 and I literally thought the subway had exploded and all the cars pushed around on top of it. It was so loud.
Like, it sounded like gunfire, you know, bang, 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 and then all of a sudden 3 big explosions.
Three, 2, 1, fire. Nice job, team. The tower number 1 is on fire. The whole outside of the building was just a huge explosion. Tower 2 has had a major explosion and what appears to be a complete collapse surrounding the entire area. There's been a major collapse in the tower. The command center out here, everybody has... There was a major collapse. The World Trade Center's collapsed. Building 2 has collapsed. The other towers have collapsed. Major collapse. Major collapse.
It's a 47-story skyscraper, easily the tallest building in 33 of our states. A football field away from the Twin Towers, it collapsed mysteriously on the afternoon of 9/11 at about 5:20. Most people don't know about it. It wasn't hit by an airplane. It had 8 to 10 fairly small fires and a lot of smoke. Concentrated, curiously enough, on the 12th and 13th floor, that which is occupied by the Securities and Exchange Commission, which lost thousands of files related to hundreds of cases it was actively pursuing against Wall Street companies like Enron. And it's on the opposite side of the building from the Twin Towers that collapsed.
Estimates, we cannot track $2.3 trillion in transactions.
2.3 trillion with a T.
So how did that fire get so strong all around the 12th floor? Well, here's Building 7 coming down second by second. You can see the gaining downward momentum. You can put it on a plot of drop distance versus time. It fits the graph perfectly in the first 2.5 seconds, indicating the structure had to have been removed before the next floor came down, meaning the building can't fall at free fall speed and do any other work because all of its gravitational potential has been converted into kinetic energy. It can't crush 40,000 tons of steel on its way down without slowing down. It did not slow down. It dropped as fast as a rock dropped. Let's take a quick look at the Twin Towers because the evidence is even far greater. And incredible amounts of pyroclastic-like dust from the pulverized concrete developing even before the gravitational potential has a chance to develop. This is very telling. We have squibs or explosions coming out, but you can see the explosions racing down 30 stories ahead of the supposed kind of pancaking collapse all the way down. Very violent explosions traveling at free fall speed. The debris goes 12 to 1,400 feet, lateral ejection. This is an organic asymmetrical damage to the building from the planes and the fires, and yet we have complete symmetrical displacement of debris filling ground zero.
Look carefully at the collapse itself. Notice the puffs of concrete issuing from the sides of the building well ahead of the collapse wave. Called squibs in demolition language, these are actual explosives, charges firing visibly through the exterior as gravity pulls the building down. Here are more.
I did pass through a couple of parks and on some of the streets, and before, when I reported about an hour ago, there were people at their gas pumps who turned to look at the smoke that was coming from the city, folks stepping out of bodegas and stores to look. Now people are gathering in large groups. In fact, in one corner, I saw a group of people actually holding hands and praying. As I stand on the Manhattan Bridge, which is closed, it is open to pedestrian traffic. Some people are walking around, but there's just no way for them to, as I look at something else that I can, as if a demolition team set off when you see the old demolitions of these old buildings.
It looks like one of those scenes of an old building being purposely dynamited and
Fires, for instance, destroy buildings very differently than controlled demolitions. They tend to creep from place to place in a building, burning out an area every 20 minutes or so, moving on looking for fresh new fuel sources. So when a building does come down by fire, and you'll note that never in history has a steel frame high-rise ever come down by fire, even though we have 100 examples, many of which are very hot, longer lasting, and much larger than the fires in the 3 buildings we're going to be looking at today. But say a wood frame building, for instance, if it does collapse, it'll fall asymmetrically. It'll fall over, not go down through the path of greatest resistance, but it'll be a natural organic process with slow, gradual deformations. That's what we look for and see in fires. Why is that a problem? Because the fires are only 1,400 degrees and steel doesn't begin to melt until 3,000 degrees. We're missing 1,000 degrees of heat energy in the official story. What could have created all of that heat, all of that molten metal? We're going to be looking at thermite as a suspect, which creates temperatures of 4,500 degrees and whose byproduct is not molten steel, but molten iron. These buildings fell over in earthquakes. Their structural systems tend to hang together. You see what was a building down at the bottom. It doesn't decompose or dismember into its individual structural elements. The concrete is not pulverized to dust. Remember, buildings that collapse don't disintegrate into their core elements.
I'm curious about the pool of molten steel that was found in the bottom of the towers.
I am too.
And
please tell me about it. Have you seen it?
Well, not personally, but eyewitnesses there found huge poles of molten steel beneath the towers. And some scientists don't think that the collapse of the building could have melted all that steel. And physics professor analyzed some of the steel, and Stephen Jones, and he found evidence of thermate residue, which would explain how the buildings collapsed by means of pre-planted explosives. So, have you analyzed the steel for any of those residues?
First of all, let's go back to your basic premise that there was a pool of molten steel. I know of absolutely nobody, no eyewitness who said so.
You'd get down below and you'd see molten steel running down the channel rails, like you're in a foundry. Like lava.
The fires got very intense down there and actually melted beams where it was molten steel that was being dug out.
This fused element of steel, molten steel and concrete and all of these things all fused by the heat into one single element.
And almost like a chunk of lava from Kilauea or Iceland, where they're very sharp but breakable shards on the end here.
This 8-ton steel I-beam is 6 inches thick. It was selected to be preserved for future generations for the near-perfect horseshoe-like bend formed during the collapse.
I found it hard to believe that it actually bent because of the size of it and how there's no cracks in the iron. It bent without almost a single crack in it. It takes thousands of degrees to bend steel like this.
Typically you'd have buckling and tearing on the tension side, but there's no buckling at all.
You saw steel, some of the thickest steel I've ever seen, bent like a pretzel. And you just couldn't imagine the force that took. The grapplers were pulling stuff out, big sections of iron that were literally on fire on the other end. They would hit the air and burst into flames, which was pretty spooky to see.
There was even a point where you would create an air pocket by moving steel, fueling the fires underground. It would ignite cars and cars would just blow up. But, you know, these underground fires were just like the fires of hell.
This is how it's been since day one. Oh, it's unbelievable. And this is 6 weeks later, almost 6 weeks later. And as we get closer to the center of this, it gets hotter and hotter. It's probably 1,500 degrees. We've had some small windows into what we thought was a core at some point, and it looked like an oven, you know, it was just roaring inside. It was just a bright reddish orange color. See that stuff he's pulling out? What was that shit? We're gonna hold off on the water. See the stuff he's pulling out? Yeah. It's red hot. If we hit it too much steam, you won't be able to see what he's doing. Great.
You see how this debris is still smoking? That's from the fires that are still burning. 8 weeks later, we still got fires burning. Every now and then, one of the pieces of equipment will dig in, they'll open up a small area, the oxygen will rush in, and you'll get this plume of brown, black smoke coming up. That's because that fire just got more oxygen. So, I mean, these things are burning. At one point, I think they were about 2,800 degrees.
Underground, it was still so hot that molten metal dripped down the sides of a wall from Building 6.
There were fires of 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit below the ground.
And all of a sudden, he comes out of this little tunnel screaming, "Wait till you see what I found." And he pulls in ministers and officials, and there, this cross is fully extended, melted together with the intense heat. The two beams were never initially part of the same structure. Heat literally melted them together. And the piece of metal that's draped over was molten metal that had literally fallen over one of the arms.
Steel-toed boots is one of the biggest things.
Steel-toed boots?
Steel-toed boots. Out still on the rubble, it's still, I believe, 1,100 degrees. The guy's boots just melt within a few hours.
It was literally steaming. Your boots would melt in certain areas. That's how hot it was. The steel was coming out red in certain areas from the first couple of weeks at least.
Go back to your basic premise that there was a pool of molten steel. I know of absolutely nobody, no eyewitness who said so, nobody who's produced it. I was on the site, I was on the steel yards, so I don't know that that's so.
As you see this amazing quantity of heat propelling it in this cauliflower-like formation, typical of a volcano almost. You and I have a problem. Because the implications of this are staggering. If these buildings were brought down by explosive controlled demolition, then how, who, why, how'd they get away with it? How do you get instant acceleration of 55 miles an hour laterally in order to get 600 feet away? You need some other kind of energy other than a gravitational collapse. So this is a feat that only a handful of companies in the US can accomplish. Extremely high tech, only put out by Los Alamos and Lawrence Livermore Labs very recently. It's not made in a cave in Afghanistan. We're not talking about the same set of individuals anymore. This is extremely high-tech stuff put out by defense contractors. This happened on 9/11. If this came down by explosive controlled demolition, it puts everything into question relative to the collapses of the other two buildings on 9/11. It's part of the same problem.
I remember getting a call from the fire department commander telling me that they were not sure they were going to be able to contain the fire. I said, you know, we've had such terrible loss of life. Maybe the smartest thing to do is pull. And they made that decision to pull, and then we watched the building collapse.